Welcome, everyone, to the first day of the 2-week program that we have dubbed YachtCon Back to School. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, you're going to have the opportunity to learn to properly appreciate a bottle of wine, the finer points of creating cocktails, becoming a better artist, embarking on a mystical journey through the South Sound, and what makes a proper pizza. You also get the opportunity to learn more about some of your favorite Seattle soccer personalities, the first of whom you're going to meet tonight. If you're new to YachtCon, here's a quick synopsis. Back in 2015, we wanted to celebrate Nos Audietes' 200th podcast episode. One thing led to another, and we decided not only to do a live version of the podcast, but to give a totally pretentious name. YachtCon was christened. Over the years, it's moved from a warehouse to a restaurant to a brewery, and then to an actual theater. We seriously considered going dark this year, but decided that it was worthwhile to keep the momentum going, and more importantly, to raise money for a worthy charity at a time when their services are as important as ever. We knew that simply trying to take the live version online wasn't really going to translate, so we worked with some of our friends in the food and beverage industry to cook up, pardon the pun, some great stuff for you. We then added a few more creative and interview-based elements to round it out. YachtCon Back to School was officially in session. Although our paid spots are selling out quickly, I wanted to remind everyone that all courses are free to audit, and I also wanted to give a plug to some of the courses for which we still have supplies. Adventures in Watercoloring on March 24th and Fashionable Pizza Making on March 26th. We're also selling opportunities to make Lickit, Aaron, and myself eat spicy hot wings and ask Garth some spicy questions during the How to Build a Dynasty course that serves as YachtCollege's capstone project on March 28th. Visit sounderatheart.com/YachtCon to get more details on all that. Aside from serving as a personal ego boost, the main reason we're doing all this is to contribute to a much needed resources to our charity partner. As we've done in the 4 previous visions of this event, any proceeds from this will be donated to the Seattle Children's Autism Center. In years past, they've used the money we raised to buy big red safety boxes, which are then given to families to help them better manage children with autism. While these are usually handed out in person, this year the Autism Center has incurred added fees due to shipping them, so the money is even more needed than normal. So far, we've raised more than $6,000 this year alone, and could easily equal the more than $10,000 we raised last year. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation to help reach that mark, you can do so by visiting give.seattlechildrens.org/YachtCon. If that's a lot to remember, don't worry, we'll be sharing that link a lot during the next couple weeks. Before we get started, I should also thank everyone who made this possible. Full Pull Wines, the doctor's office, and the Masonry are the food-related businesses that donated supplies and whose owners are sharing their expertise and serving as our faculty. MLS Watercolors is sharing their creative talents and teaching their first ever course. Once again, Emily Cummings worked countless hours behind the scenes to help produce and make this event happen. Dave Clark also volunteered tons of time helping out, as well as sharing his passion in teaching a course. My Nos Audietes partners, Aaron Campo and Lickit P, once again did a lot of the heavy lifting that won't necessarily be in front of the camera. 2 old friends of mine from college, Colin Steiner and James Morgan, designed our poster and effectively served as our producers, respectively. Finally, Beth Mantle, Susie Rance, Tim Foss, and Jacob Cristobal have donated time as moderators, hosts, and/or behind-the-scenes helpers. As usually, this has been a true team effort and would have literally been impossible if not for the volunteer work these people put in. If you're watching this and somehow don't know what else is going on, I highly recommend that you check out our course catalog. We'll have something going on virtually every other night between now and March 28th. And even though some of the classes are technically sold out of supplies, every class is available to audit for free. So let's get this thing started and get to the stuff that you came here for. Our first guest, just as he has been in each of the previous 4 years, is Sounders head coach Brian Smetzer, entering his 6th season as Sounders FC head coach and his 20th straight season as part of this organization. Smetzer is one of the most accomplished coaches in American soccer history. He's the only coach to have won multiple league titles in both the USL and MLS, and the Sounders have been to the playoffs in all but one of his previous 19 seasons on the coaching staff. His MLS winning percentage of .608 is the best among coaches with at least 70 games of experience, and his .762 playoff winning percentage is easily the best in MLS history. He has 2 MLS Cups. He's been to 4 finals. You know, Brian, this all comes after a long, if not necessarily illustrious professional playing career that started when he signed as a teenager with the NASL Sounders out of Nathan Hale High School. stretched across at least 6 different leagues, and featured stops on just about every professional indoor and outdoor team the region has ever known. It is my extreme honor to introduce our first lecturer at YachtCollege, the one and only Brian Schmetzer. Welcome, Brian.
Let me take myself off mute.
Yes.
Woohoo! I was going to say, I hope Adrian was listening to the intro.
Yes, I sent him the notes.
You can be my sub agent for the next time my contract comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope all those points got hit. But you're going to be around for a while. I mean, you're not going to have contract negotiations for years now, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe if we win a couple more MLS Cups, I might renegotiate. You never know.
There you go. I like that. So
I do. Wait, before you answer the question,
no.
Say my career wasn't great. Is that what you just said?
I said not necessarily illustrious, I think is what I said.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's different.
I mean, you know what? I was not planning on starting here, but you bring it up. You have, I think I got it right. You've played in like virtually every iteration or coached on every iteration of a professional team in this area, indoor, outdoor. Just tell us about some of those indoor days. I mean, I know you played with Preki when he was at the absolute height of his stardom. Just start with a story about Preki or the indoor days.
I mean, this is almost like we rehearsed this or something, Jeremiah.
Right. I
am so happy that you just started off by saying, hey, Brian, why don't you tell us a story about Preki? Because there is a running debate amongst the coaching staff right now at this moment. Number one, who has the best left foot? Because Gonzo, myself, Preki, Jimmy, Hutchison when he was here, he was right-footed. I think Tommy beats us all with his right foot because Tommy kicks balls at the goalkeepers every day. But there's that debate. But Jeremiah, there was a social media post a while back from the San Diego Sockers, and it was, it had some reference to myself and the old days in indoor soccer. And in that particular clip, there was a scene where Preki was playing for the Stars and I was playing for the Sockers, and Preki had gone down and tried to score or something, and then I got the ball and I ran past him going the other way because he didn't defend. And, I had a lot of joy bringing that clip up on the big screen of our coach's office, just me and Preki going at it. But our debate is really, okay, what makes a good team? To the theme of the night, let's go to school here. Let's talk tactics. Let's talk about how teams win. So Preki has his version. I have mine. I'm about to give both sides of it. Too bad he's not here. He could
next time.
Well, that would take all night. Anyway, Preki says he was the best player on the team because he scored a bunch of goals, which might have been true because he scored a pile of goals in the indoor days. I mean, he was unbelievable. He scored a ton of goals for Tacoma, had a great career, pushed him, remember, because he came to this country indoor player and launched his outdoor career, which is pretty unheard of. So what I always tell Preki is I say, look, this is why I'm so tactically good and why I helped the team, because I knew that you wouldn't play defense. You just didn't want to play defense. You wanted to score goals. And so I had to mark my guy over here. And then I also had to watch Preki's guy over here. So I was always defending for two people so that Preki could do his thing and I did my thing, which was sacrifice for the good of the squad. And how do you win championships? Do you win it by good defense? Or do you win it by scoring more goals? I don't know. And Gonzo and Jimmy and Tommy, they all laugh at us because me and Preki argue like, 12-year-old kids. But it's great. And the question's out there. Was I more important for my team because I marked Preki's guy and I allowed him to do what he wanted to do? Or was Preki better because I would just pass him the ball and he would score? I don't know.
So your playing careers, though, did you both play on the Stars at one point?
Yeah, and in St. Louis as well.
Okay. And so what how would you describe your relationship before he started coaching with you? There was a logic to it when you thought about it at the time, but were you friends? Like, how long does your relationship
Yeah,
go back? What was your ongoing
well,
relationship like?
well, look, when we were in St. Louis, we lived in the same apartment complex. They were there for Preki and Trisha, his wife. Trisha, great, wonderful person. Uh, they were there at the birth of my youngest child, Kian. I helped my ex-wife out there with babysitting and stuff like that, because I had two kids already. It went back all the way to the late 80s, early 90s.
And so when one of the things you've brought this up a few times, and I just don't know that it gets mentioned enough. You've surrounded yourself with maybe the most accomplished staff in all. I would think probably unquestionably the most accomplished staff in all of MLS. You have a former World Cup player. You have a Champions League winner. You have a former two-time MLS MVP, who also was the head coach of the year in MLS. Tommy Ducha obviously has coached some of the greats. You brought in your top physical guy, comes from, has a great resume. How important is it for you to surround yourself with people who are challenging you and not just kind of letting you get away with being your way or the highway kind of thing?
Well, it's part of what makes any organization, whether you're in pro sports or a business or whatever. If you are a leader of an organization or a department within a corporation or whatever, you always, as the manager of that group, of that department, you want to surround yourself with the absolute best people, and then you want to encourage them to voice their opinion. It's a safe work environment. We can say whatever we need to say in that coach's office. And Jeremiah, there are times when it does become a bit challenging because, look, they're all accomplished. They all could be head coaches. And they might think, well, I would do things different than Brian and, this, that, and the other. I accept that. I have a strong enough backbone to know that, when Gonzo says something passionately, Preki recalls one of his, experiences from when he was a coach. I accept that. I listen to it. I ask myself, why did they say that? What are they driving at? What are they trying to say? And then we talk about it and we come to then a conclusion where, look, if it's majority and we decide this is the way to move forward, then we do it. But if there's a divided room, then yeah, sometimes I have to come in and say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. But I can't talk enough about the staff. I mean, Tommy has been with me, since 06, I believe, 05. Sacrificed a lot when he first started the USL days. Was good friends with Keller, with Casey. That was a natural connection. Casey to come back. Casey, one of the greatest goalkeepers in, American history. Tommy always worked out with him. Gonzo, Mexican national team player, tactically astute. Jimmy, like you said, a Champions League winner. I mean, only maybe Vieira and Thierry Henry. Well, he's not here anymore. Those two guys aren't here anymore. But I mean, who else plays in a Champions League final that coaches? Mm-hmm. You have Preki, who had a tremendous playing career, but then was also an MLS Coach of the Year. So I don't have any issue. You brought up Adam Owen. I mean, he's a doctor. He's got a PhD. He's a lot smarter than I am. So I love the staff. I think it's a great staff. I think it's a very efficient staff. We have really great interactive meetings where we're always bouncing ideas off each other. So that part of it, I think I'm pretty smart in hiring good people. It makes you better. It does push you.
How does the work share among, you, Preki, Gonzo, and Jimmy work? Like, do they have defined roles, or is it all just kind of like you throw it into a cauldron and it all like turns into magic?
Sometimes it doesn't turn into magic, but yes, we try and be a little bit more specific. I mean, we had this idea a while back where, Jimmy would be the coach of the defenders or take most of that work, and Gonzo would work with the midfielders. And then we had Ante Razov and now Preki kind of work with the forwards. And we still hold true to that structure. But I could flip it around again if we're going to school here. So Preki was a forward, and he knew how to, beat defenses or beat defenders one-on-one. So he actually can reverse that and say, okay, if you needed to stop me, these are the best defenders I played against in my career, and this is what they did. And so Jimmy can, also doesn't want to be corralled as just a defensive coach, because we're not NFL football. He wants to be a well-rounded, coach of his own at some point. And so I let him do that with pleasure, Jimmy. If you want to take a exercise where the wing backs are overlapping and you're working on their attacking movements and they're crossing the ball, so be it. You want to work with some of the young players, and it's not just about defending, it's possession oriented or something like that. I always encourage that. And Gonzo can do both as well. He can attack, he can coach the attackers, and he does a great job at it, and he can also talk about the defending tactics as well.
So take us inside a game. When you are, I assume the old saying, obviously everyone has a game plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? And I would imagine that's very true with soccer, where you can draw the X and O's, you can come up and you can plan for one thing, but the way the game plays out is oftentimes another. I imagine that's what halftime changes are for and halftime adjustments are for. But how much tactical influence can you have in a game, and how do the coaches fit? How do the various coaches fit into that?
Another great question. There we have a little bit of structure as well. So Jimmy and Tommy Dutra actually go over all the set pieces with the guys to make sure that everyone, from Raul back to Steph, know their roles and responsibilities on set pieces. Gonzo will take care of any final tactics once we get the lineup. Preki works on players, building their confidence in the warm-ups, talking to them, pulling them aside, talking about that. So we kind of divide and conquer that way a little bit. But Jeremy, look, I'm a big guy about, setting your team up with a tactics or structure. But I truly believe that sports and sports in general, you're not always going to be able to impose your will on your opponent. That's just unrealistic. And so the players I like Christian, like Nico, Raul, through sheer brilliance, Chad, guys that can adapt, Zach Scott's back in the day. There were a lot of guys that have played for this club that could solve problems, because that's what happens. We can draw it up on the chalkboard. We can say, okay, this is what we expect, and then all of a sudden, for some odd reason, somebody's having an off day, or the other team's just playing better than you, and you got to adjust. You got to make those adjustments. So as we walk off at halftime, I've already scribbled my notes. You guys seen my little notepad there. I usually check in with the guys as I walk off, unless I'm of course upset at the first half, and then I'm just counting to 100 just to calm down a little bit. But I like checking in with guys as we walk off the field. Ravi Ravameni, who I'm sure we're going to talk about later in the broadcast, has clips. Jorge, our video guy, has clips. Gonzo will take a look at some of the clips. Tommy likes to sit with Steph about goal kicks, playing out from the back, certain things. And we compile information amongst all of the coaches through verbal feedback and what we see on video. And then I pick the top 2, maybe 3 attacking things I want to talk about. And then defensively, maybe 2, maybe 3 tops. And then I say my piece, and then the assistants again do the rest. I mean, then we'll take some guys, and Jimmy will take some guys, and Preki will take some guys, and they kind of filter out the rest of the information that we talked about.
So I heard an interview with Bruce Arena a while back where he talked about the importance of man management versus tactics. You worked with Siggy a long time. He seemed to have a similar philosophy where it was less about X's and O's and more about philosophies and getting the players in the right positions. And I kind of get the sense that's your perspective too. But what do you think people misunderstand about the job when it comes to balancing tactics versus balancing man management? Maybe it's a late game sub. I know you've talked about sometimes you got to bring in Roman Torres in part to keep him engaged as much as it is to shore up the defense.
Yeah, I can answer that a couple of different ways. Man management is obviously something that's critical. It's vital in pro sports. I mean, as the manager, you have to deal with so many different aspects of the game that I don't think there's one. Maybe if you're Pep Guardiola, but I guess he's got a bunch of really super talented assistants to help him, or Klopp, or someone like that. But you got to be able to do multitask, but you also rely on good assistants and good people. And the tactics are the tactics, and some guys are, Greg Berhalter, he had his tactics in Columbus, his tactics for the national team, and that's just a different way of doing things, Jeremiah. I don't think there's any right way or wrong way. It's just my way or Bruce's way or Greg's way or Pep's way or Sir Alex Ferguson's way, probably the best or, most known man manager in our sport. And, for me, my personal philosophy is this. Yes, tactics are important. We always try and have some tactical structure within the group at the beginning of the year, throughout the year based on different opponents. Who do we want to allow to have the ball on our opponents? Who do we want to make sure we're aware of? You always have those little tactical nuances in your game plan. But again, I'll throw the question out there to all the coaches and the teachers and the students out there. Let's just talk about man management in the sense of putting the best team out on the field. And here we go. So Victor Rodriguez, when he was here with Brad Smith, I mean, they were dynamite at the beginning of that year. I mean, they were killing teams. Victor would pick the ball up in the pocket. Brad would overlap. It was fun to watch. Super talented players. We had Jordan on the right, Raul, Nico, Victor, Brad. It was great. Then you flip that around. Then you have Jordan and Nuhu. And what does that pair look like? And what are your tactics there? So I encourage Brad because of his profile, his positional profile. He could get up and down. He's fast. Victor coming inside. That was perfect. Now with Nuhu, more stay-at-home defender, and Jordan being out there 1-against-1 or being able to stretch the field. Is that a tactic or is that just man management? Are we just managing your group and putting a certain pair together that, gives you a better chance of winning the game? Or is that a tactic? You could go to last year when we had bits and pieces of Christian Roldan out on the right wing, Gustav and JP in the middle. And then, late in the year when Gustav was on international duty and all that, we slid Christian back in and JJ was there. JJ and Christian are polar opposites probably of, how to play right midfield or right wing. And so there was a different tactic when JJ was there. His job was to come inside the pocket, get the ball on his left foot, try and get the ball in behind to Jordan. Christian, his tactics were, okay, he was really good at attacking the prime assist zone. And how do we play with Christian on that side of the field? And so, from a tactical perspective, people might say, okay, the Sounders, they don't play a specific style. They don't have, like Berhalter when he had at Columbus or Peter Vermes at Sporting Kansas City. Those guys they just do it differently than I do. And I'm a believer that you try and get the right mix of guys on the field. And look, it's not always necessarily the best 11 soccer players you have. That's the other part of man management. Maybe it's the best group of 11. And then, yes, Jeremiah, to your point, I got to tell Roman, hey, look, Roman, I got Javi and Ymar playing pretty good. And, we brought you back, but, it just tranquilo, so it's always a bit of both. It's always man management and what is your vision for the team?
Well, I think sometimes the popular narrative is that you aren't necessarily a tactical coach. I don't think that's true. You seem to have actually embraced more of the tactical side of the game. I know you've gotten advanced coaching licenses since you've become a head coach. How has your knowledge and appreciation of the tactical side changed since you've moved into this position?
Well, again, it comes down to, whatever my tactics were, selective pressure, I like stepping up higher up the field, I like putting pressure higher up the field. I'm a proponent of playing out of the back. There are certain things, perhaps signature pieces of ideas that I bring to the team. And then again, I allow people that are really good at their jobs to implement the ideas that I have. Case in point. Okay, so how do we defend? Active defending. So when we are up in the opponent's half of the field, we always want our center backs and maybe in a back line of four, one fullback to stay connected. If the ball's on the left, then Kelvin Leardom would always stay connected to the two center backs. But the two center backs had to be aware of, the center forward, but then also a player like Diego Valeri and kind of those half spaces, because Portland was a transition team. And so whenever the ball would turn over, first guy they looked to was Valeri. And so we called that active defending. And so Jimmy would drill those guys, make them watch film. And as we were attacking, the guys were already setting themselves up defensively to slow down the threat of any counterattacking movements. And so that little tactic of active defending, that's what we implement. But I let Jimmy do it. He's the one that does it, playing out from the back. Gonzo was a possession-based midfielder in his career. Where do you find the numerical overload? Starting with the goalkeeper. Your goalkeeper gives you an extra guy already. And then where do you find the little spaces? Where do you have the numerical advantage to advance the ball? Well, he does that better than I do. So here's the idea, Gonzo. I want to make sure that we don't just kick goal kicks down the field so it's a 50-50 ball and maybe we win it, maybe we don't. I actually want to try and keep 100% of possession. And how do we do that? And then with Preki, it's another example. He's got a lot of ideas about how to attack in the final third. And I say, okay, well, I want Nico to play in the pockets. I want one center forward to stay high. Depending on who we have on the field, this guy has this quality over here, and this guy's a true winger. So Preki, figure out a way how we can get them arranged in the right spots, and off we go.
So I know a lot of people say tactics when they mean formations, but you've talked a lot about changing formations, or at least introducing a new formation into the regular rotation this year. What can you tell us about that, and how is that going? And I have to imagine there's something fun about that for you to be able to just try something new out at the training field.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I can't see on my screen, Jeremiah. I don't know if Am or Lickett or someone back. How many people do we have on the broadcast now? A lot? 1,000?
About 100.
Okay, let's keep that 1,000 people in the circle of trust.
Yes.
I'm gonna give away a little bit of information here, but let's keep it in the circle of trust here. So again, we go back to, after the final, and we're trying to recover. We're trying to lick our wounds a little bit. We're already starting about what can we do different? 4.5 years of 4-2-3-1. Can we get Will on the field a little bit more because he's a goal scorer, and can we do this, and this? And so that conversation started to take place already after the loss in MLS Cup. Then Jordan goes on loan. And it's like, okay, well, that's a pretty big missing piece. And, Gustav goes, and, Christian's coming inside. And so we got to fill that hole on both wings. JJ's gone. So there's another midfielder / winger gone. Now you could say, does Ethan come in? Is that his chance to shine? AOC, whoever. But Okay, let's start seriously talking about a different formation with two forwards. Now you can play 4-2, or you could play, 3-5-2, but it's always with two forwards. Get Raul and Will on the field. So we started to talk about that, and then Jordan's injury, because there was still some hope that at the end of the at the end of the summer loan, maybe Jordan comes back to us. There was some uncertainty there, and maybe it's just a temporary new look for us, and we always can go back to 4-2-3-1. But when he goes down with the injury, we're starting to think to ourselves, okay, well, this is real. I mean, we really don't have our most dangerous wide player, winger, whatever you want to call Jordan Morris. We don't have him anymore. He's gone for the entire year. And so now we have to make some real adjustments. So we are seriously, Jeremiah, talking about playing in a system with two forwards. We've tried 3 at the back. We'll try 4-4-2 diamond. We'll try and figure out a way what works best. But we are committing during this preseason to figure out a way how to get Will Bruin on the field with Raul, and then the feel-good story of Freddie Montero. And so here you go. Now I have another super talented player that wants to come back to his home team. This is going to be his home for the foreseeable future. And, that puts a smile on my face. So now I have options. If Raul has to go to World Cup qualifiers, well, I got Freddie Montero. That's great. I can go 3 for 2, and there'll be midweek games. And it just makes sense to me to play with two forwards when you have that group of players on your roster. So we are working out the kinks, Jeremiah. We're trying to figure out the best way to implement that. But there's pluses with 3 at the back. We call it 3-5-2. We have good wing backs, and Brad Smith can play wing back. Kellen Rowe, Alex has played. He could play wing back. If we stay with 4, you'd have JP, Christian, Madranda, Nico, and a diamond-shaped midfield. I mean, that would be pretty powerful. Madranda's been pretty good in preseason, so we'll kind of see how it all shakes out. But that's the objective, to try and get a couple of forwards on the field, because we lost. You guys know better than me, but Jordan got what? 12 goals and 9 assists, or whatever that was. I mean, that's a lot of production.
Yeah.
And we have to try and make up for that.
So you mentioned Freddie Montero being back. On a personal level, I'm sure that must have been exciting. He seemed genuinely excited. But what have you seen? What have you seen from him out at training? And how do you imagine him working with Nico and Raul? And in some ways, I was thinking he's never had certainly in his time in MLS, never had this much talent around him.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple cups of coffee with Freddie at Santos Coffee down on Roosevelt. Thank you, Freddie, for that little, blurb there. We had coffee. The coffee's good, really good. And we talked, because this was, again, Jeremiah, this was before Jordan's injury. And so Jordan was on loan. Freddie wanted to come back. I think his time with the Whitecaps was over, and he wanted to come back. His wife, they wanted to start their, building a house and, start their life after soccer. But he also wanted to play. He's still very competitive, ultra competitive. And so I had to just outline some expectations. I looked at him and I said, Freddie, look, I mean, what if we're playing in 4-2-3-1 and we're playing with one forward, and Raul's the starter and Will's the first backup, and you might not play? He goes, Coach, don't worry. I'll work hard. I'm going to get you to make me get on the field. So I said, okay, how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to make sure that, okay, Freddie, so when I am busting your, your butt in training, are you going to do all the work? And are you fully committed to the squad? This is the message. It's your team. It's not my team. not Adrian Hanauer's team, not Garth's team. It's the players' team. They're the ones that do all the hard work throughout the entire season. And that's the message I gave to Freddie. And he was in. Jeremiah, he was in 100%. And I believe Freddie. I think he wants to end his career here. I think he wants to have a chance. I mean, you mentioned I can't say that the Whitecaps are terrible, but you said that. No,
Call like you see him.
I mean, he wants to end his career on a good note.
And does it seem is there a, I don't know, like an unfinished business sense to that, or is that like, I don't know, is that a thing that drives him still, you think?
Yeah, for sure. He's competitive. He's always been competitive. He's always been a competitive guy. I mean, you look at his career; he's had success at many different levels. So, he's been really good. So far, so good. I don't expect any problems. Happy to be here. Happy to be home in Seattle. It's a great story. I hope it bears a lot of fruit. I hope there's a lot of goals in there and good storylines, because it couldn't happen to a nicer young man. He's a young man now. He's not a kid anymore. Since we met him, back in Colombia, up in the high-rise apartment of the owner of the team, and me, Adrian, and Chris Henderson, and we're in the middle of Colombia somewhere. I don't know where it was, Jeremiah, but I remember there's Freddie over in the corner, very quiet, 20-year-old kid, didn't say much, while all the other guys were, talking business and getting Freddie to come to the Seattle Sounders.
So one of the other things that I think kind of defined this offseason is you've brought in, you brought in Freddie, but you've also brought in a Spencer Ritchie. You brought in Kellen Rowe. You've brought in a lot of guys that have genuine ties to the Seattle area, not to speak even of all these academy kids. There has to be something like in your heart that just loves seeing players either returning here or that are from here who, like Spencer and Kellen have said they've always wanted to play for the Sounders.
I truly believe that people from the Northwest, you can read The Boys in the Boat or many other stories about athletes coming from this part of the world. We are resilient. I truly believe that. Look, Spencer Ritchie came back from a very severe broken tib fib. Kellen has, had a good career. He's a good pro. He's done lots of good things. He always has been a competitor on the field. Every time we've played against him, he has the tattoo of the skyline and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's nice to have those people with Pacific Northwest roots here, because I think they get it. I think they understand. I think they have it in their DNA that we are a resilient, group of people up here in the Northwest. So we're tough kids. We're tough kids.
There you go.
Throw that in there. We are tough kids. And I'll tell you, can I break in before you end? Can I tell a tough kid story?
Please.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about a young kid, a young player, a young academy kid, Josh Atencio. So Josh was at training. We're playing a little 6v6. This was yesterday. We're playing 6v6, like 2-minute games. And so he steals a ball, wins a ball. I think it was actually Freddie Montero. I think Freddie Montero cleated him on the shin. It was a hard tackle because the guys are competitive, right? So Freddie comes in, straight legs Josh. Josh is in pain, but he follows through on the play. He keeps going forward, and he starts to stumble, but he finds the next pass, and somebody shoots on goal, and the ball goes out, and Josh ends up on the ground, on the floor, and he is in absolute agony. He is in pain. And I'm sitting there refereeing the game, and I'm going, should I blow the whistle? Should I call the trainers on the field? No, I'm going to let this go. And so the kid is on the ground, picks himself up. He's limping profusely, but he gets up, gets back to his position, finishes out the last 30 seconds of that particular segment of our training session, goes off the field. The trainers look at him. He's got a gash, Jeremiah, 2 to 3 inch gash. He had like 12 stitches in his shin. The kid is a tough kid. That is the epitome of a tough kid right there.
Zach Scott was looking down and very, very proud, I'm sure.
Now, Zach played with a broken bone in his foot. Josh has a ways to go, but same idea.
So another person who kind of came up from within the community, not necessarily from here, but he came up from the Seattle community, and has now risen to being one of the top analysts in all of MLS. Robbie Ramenini. I hope I didn't totally butcher that. Ramameni.
Yeah.
He also seems to have been able to take a place in this organization. You mentioned him earlier. What does he bring, and what can you tell us about him?
Yeah. So, look, analytics in pro sports is critical. It's vital. And we have two people that are, kind of nerdy in some sense. Adrian and Garth, they love all the statistics and the data and all that sort of stuff, and even an old time guy like myself, I understand the importance of the job that Ravi does for the team. And he's such a humble guy, Jeremiah. I mean, he's got an Instagram account for his dog. His wife, Sarah, is really great. He was remodeling his home in South Seattle, and they planted a garden and, all this sort of stuff. And he is a really great, humble guy, Villarreal fan. And
former SB Nation blogger about Villarreal, by the way.
Yes. I think I knew that, or I heard that from someone. But anyway, so Robbie, he's this nice, humble guy. And so I couldn't help the other day poking a little fun at him, because we're having a coaches meeting. And sometimes he joins the coaches meetings just because I ask him about, he's also the salary cap guru. He took that over when Kurt Schmid left for Miami. So he's good with numbers, Microsoft guy. So here's Ravi, humble individuals, got an important role in the club, and they promoted him. And so we're having this coaches meeting. Ravi doesn't know what's about to happen to him. And as all of us are sitting there, Ravi comes into the room, and I tell the coaching staff, I go, gentlemen, please stand up and welcome the new Vice President of Data Analytics for the Seattle freaking Sounders, Ravi Ravameni. And we all clapped and cheered, and his face turned beet red. I mean, he was so embarrassed, but I mean, he's a great guy, and he fills a vital role for the club.
Well, do you know the name of the dog's Instagram account? Because I'm sure people are going to be looking to follow it.
I'd have to look at my phone over here, Jeremiah. I can put it out there,
Okay. We'll put it in the show notes, as they say.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. But, Robbie, let me give you an example, because you asked me the question, what does he do?
Yeah.
And it's not there just for us to poke fun at him. I mean, he actually has a job. Look, when we were looking at Joe Paulo, and Gregory was a target for us last summer. So Garth would say, okay, Ravi, I need a deep dive on, JP and Gregory, and compare them to Ozzy in his prime, and compare him to Kyle Beckerman in his prime, and how do they pair up against, former, MLS or current former MLS, number sixes. And so Robbie does that, and he has these x-axis, the y-axis. Are they good in defending? Where do they plot out on the charts? What's their, defending actions per game? I mean, he really does a lot of good work that is a valuable tool, again, for us. Because, again, the old school guy, what do my eyes tell me? That's what we're asking ourselves. And then it's always handy to have the data to kind of back up, what we see.
Well, we got some questions from our audience that I wanted to, before we let you go, I wanted to get a few of these questions asked to you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's go.
Aaron, what you got?
Yeah, so the first one is from Dave Clark, our dear friend Dave Clark. Coach, what do you like about Wade Weber taking another step up in his career?
He's just like me, old school. He loves tough kids. He's gonna He's going to work those kids. He's going to get them to be better. And you know what? He's a teacher. He has been in the teaching profession. So look, there's a lot of good soccer players out there that had talented careers and all of that sort of stuff. But how do you get the ideas from your head and your own playing experiences into the head of Reed or, AOC or any of the young kids down at Defiance, Sota, how those, Cody Baker, how are you going to get those ideas into those guys' heads? So I actually think he does really well with that. I've listened to him talk. He was in the preseason meetings with us as a coaching staff, socially, 6 foot apart, masks, open area. We were very safe. But he was involved in some of our meetings, and I like what I heard.
Yeah, I think I made this comment that I think he's probably the only USL or MLS coach who also taught IB history in high school.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so the next question is from Jerry Neal. How big of a role does analytics play in making our team as good as it is?
Yeah, well, I told you about Ravi. We have every fancy tool there is to measure, total distance, high speed running, sprint distance, accels, decels, change them. We do all of that real time. And so I'll give you 2 stories. I'll give you one good one and then one kind of common sense or old school one. And, so the guys that are doing all that work, we have targets every day, every training session we have planned. Okay, we want to get 7.5 kilometers of total distance. We want the goal for the average of the squad to be 300 meters of high speed running. We want the sprint distance on this particular day to be lower. We don't want them to sprint today because it's in the periodization of the week. And so we have a live feed of all the players and their GPS units. And so we will go, and Ashmead, our data analysis guy on the field, can take an iPad and we can say, okay, so-and-so is going above that, high speed running 300 meter limit. So we might curtail him or put a sub in or whatever. Or conversely, if somebody's not doing the work, then we would take them after that particular training session and do some sprints with him so that they reach the appropriate amount of loading for that particular player. And it also varies on position. Because look, center backs don't sprint as much as outside backs, and they don't run as far a distance as midfielders. So we have those metrics as well. And so by position, by average, by the particular day, we have very specific marks of what we want to get accomplished out of training, and that helps us train smarter and better, so that at the end of the week, guys aren't overloaded and we reduce injury. Now, the one good story about that is we had a training session the other day, and I think it was Friday, and we're going to give them the weekend off. And, our goal was for 7.5K for that particular session. And there was a young kid that busted through the roof. It was like he went to 9.5 kilometers, which, look, in a 9-minute game, Nico Ladero runs 13K plus. Christian's at like 12.5. He's right below him. But Nico and those guys are off the charts as far as their athletic ability is concerned. So this young player in a training session was at 95 or 9.5 or 9.8. And the fitness guys were like going, "Hey, Brian, you gotta slow him down." And I'm like going, I can't slow that kid down because that kid wants to make the team. He wants to show the coach that he deserves to be on the field. And so how do you manage that situation? I'm not going to tell the kid, oh, you know what? You can't work hard because it's not allowed. I actually say the exact opposite. I say you young kids better be the hardest working kids on the field, because that's just the way the Sounders are. That's what we do. You kids have to earn your right to play on the team. So interesting dynamic there with the whole data collection and everything, but it still comes down to a personal level. Again, I use the data in hopefully a positive way to kind of, you're either poking the guys to do a little more, or sometimes with the senior players, you got to make sure they're doing the appropriate amount of work.
And that's actually a great segue into the next question, which comes from Trent. How do you balance youth development and the need to get kids playing time with maintaining a competitive squad and a veteran squad?
Yeah, well, that's the $50 million question, right? I mean, look, you saw the transfer fees for Aronson. DK, the kid from Orlando, there was a rumor out there of 10 million. Vancouver sold Davies for whatever it was, 18 million, 20 million. I mean, those are big numbers, right? So what our players have to do, and what we discuss as a group, as a staff, is that, the players have to earn their way up on the squad. Sounders have been notoriously hard to break into because, look, we spend a lot of money on our team. And, how is a young player going to be integrated into a group where that group is full of senior players that are making a lot of money? Case in point. Jordan Morris, remember in 2016, he had that little taste of the national team, but we, at the beginning of that year, in that preseason, when Zig was there, we had Oba, we had Nelson, we had Jordan, and, it was like, and we had Clint. I mean, how is Jordan Morris, fresh out of college, going to play in front of Nelson, Valdez, Oba, and Clint? I mean, challenging. And then Oba went to China, and that opened the door. That kind of opened the door. DeAndre Yedlin. How did that happen? We had Adam Johansson, sometime captain of the Swedish national team. But how did DeAndre get his chance to be the starting right back for our team? Well, beginning of that preseason, Adam had a little bit of a pulled muscle, and Ziggy was, going to play the veteran guy, but an injury, and then DeAndre comes in, lights it up, and all of a sudden he's playing in Europe now. Christian, kudos to Christian, because he was a kid that came out of nowhere, the young player, down the spine of the team where we normally spend a lot of money, but he was able to do it, accomplish it. So it's not easy. It's not easy, but it can happen. And, there's a crop of young kids that are hungry. So we'll see.
All right. So the next question is from Susie Rance. Has the club thought any differently about mental health resources and analytics for players in the last few years, and really particularly since the start of the pandemic, I think, as well?
Look, we have talked about psychologists, sports psychologists, all that sort of stuff. The pandemic, how does that affect young players? We have kids that are homeschooled. We bring them with host families and stuff like that. I think that's something that we will look for in the future. But right now it's a very, kind of limited. I mean, the psychologists are the coaches, really. I mean, we've all had kids, older kids. I've had older kids, and, the peer pressure within the group, the senior players kind of help the young guys. So it's kind of by committee, but we don't have a, team psychologist or anything like that.
Next one is from Taylor Wimberly. Just back to the sort of the tactical talk, I guess. If a 3-5-2 is the preferred formation, how do you handle depth at center back?
Well, again, we're in the cone of silence. Cone of silence here. Nuhu has looked pretty good as the left-sided center back in a back line of three. So his physical characteristics are there. The young kid Sissoko from Defiance has looked pretty good. We'll of course miss some players for international duty in the summertime, so that might lead us to a couple games back to a 4-2-3-1. So we're still working on that.
All right, a couple more questions. The next one, I think the most important question. What is your favorite pen for note-taking?
I don't know if I have a favorite pen, but I know my wife doesn't like when I click my pen during my interviews. She always trying to coach me up and make sure that I'm not clicking my pen. So this particular pen right here, I can't click. It's just got a cap. It's got a cap, and I have to close it.
And the last question is from Hope. What is your favorite moment as a sounder, as a player, a coach, fan, any of it?
Hope, thank you for ending this session on such a softball question. I mean, who can forget the joy of 70,000 people in and around the stadium, the entire Pacific Northwest, the city of Seattle, the pride we all felt. I mean, hosting MLS Cup is by far the easiest and best answer to that question. That was such a great afternoon on so many different levels. I think the people in the Brougham end zone, you guys deserve that. The people that started with us in 09, they deserved it. The people back in the USL days that came to Starfire, you guys deserve that. The people way back in Memorial Stadium, watching Dave Gillett, Pepe Fernandez, Jimmy Gabriel, all of those all of you people deserve that moment in our history. That to me was absolutely the best moment in Sounders history.
Well, I got two questions for you that I'm going to try to pose these to almost everybody that comes on, and then we're going to let you get out of here. The first one is, what do you think you've learned about either yourself, the team, your philosophy? What have you learned in the last year with everything the way that it was?
You mean from a soccer perspective, or just in general in life?
Whatever, take it wherever you want. Like, it doesn't have to be soccer. It can be anything you want.
Yeah, I would. The reason why I asked that follow-up question, Jeremiah, because look, our country has been splintered. I'm a firm believer in the environment, global warming, all of that. There's so many things that we need to try and fix. And I made a pledge for my New Year's resolution just to be nicer to people, maybe bridge a gap between people that don't see things the same way as I do. I'm firmly committed to, saving the environment. We had grandbabies come into our lives in the last year and a half, and we have another one on the way. And I am so fired up about, having these young people come in and, providing for them and teaching them and watching them grow up. Our kids are great. And, just making sure that they have a good life in a stable planet and in something that, that we might all take for granted, but it's something that's happening very rapidly, and we need to address those issues, and so COVID, was just almost the icing on the cake. I mean, the political stuff, the environment, then you have COVID. I mean, it was a triple whammy, and it just makes you reflect on how thankful you need to be to, have a nice life and a wife and plenty good moments in your soccer career and your job, and your kids are safe, your dog is doing well, Simba's great, and you get to enjoy a glass of Washington red wine. I mean, I appreciate all the small moments that I have that I can afford to take in. And from a soccer perspective, Jeremiah, I think what happened was with the whole loss, that the last game certainly was disappointing. It was such a bitter disappointment for us. And, the whole contract negotiation that kind of labored on. And look, I'm not a greedy guy. And, could we take care of the assistants and, all of that sort of stuff. Again, it just makes me appreciate my job. I have a great job. This is a great community. And, I'm very thankful that I'm part of the Seattle Sounders.
So the last thing I want to close on is, if you were designing Yacht College, for instance, what's the course you would want to make sure we had, and who's the teacher you'd want to make sure is teaching it?
I mean, I could poke fun at Ravi, and he could, make me smarter. There's certainly guys that are more organized than I am. There's super meticulous guys. You might have stumped me there, Jeremiah. I mean, I could figure out how, to be a better broadcaster in case I get fired. I might have to take over Taylor Twellman's job. Figure out how to be a national icon on ESPN, or, God forbid, Jeremiah, I needed to become Alexi Lawless and be some controversial. Maybe he could teach me a few things about broadcasting. I don't know.
Well, that's a good note to end this on. So thank you so much, Brian, for giving us your time, for doing this, for opening up Yacht College in a way that, we would have hoped and dreamed. And, I really do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been great having you as a part of the YachtCon's past and this one, and hopefully we have a few more in us too. So,
well, congrats to you, Jeremiah. The idea, the whole thing, it's a great event. It's to a good cause. It gets all the soccer people together. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you. And that's a good plug, a good transition into, if you liked what you saw today, we got basically 2 weeks of courses lined up. Go to Sounder at Heart /YachtCon. You can see all the courses that we're offering. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think, for the next couple of weeks. We got a bunch of your players that are going to be coming on, doing wine tasting, mixing cocktails. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Wait a second. What did you say?
No.
Who's mixing cocktails?
I mean, I don't.
Okay. All right.
I think they'll be drinking mocktails.
Okay, mocktails. There you go.
Yeah.
That's better, because I'll be watching. I pay attention.
Of course, I know.
To social media. Yeah.
I know. All right. Well, I guess we'll sign off on that note. Remember, you'll never yacht alone.